Hey friends, what's up? Philip here with Points of Philip, and I'm here because there's a really interesting rumor about a huge new product from Capital One. Let's get into it. Before we do that, I want to ask you guys to like and subscribe. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the news and whether or not Capital One is releasing a Saver X soon. This current saver used to be a Saver One, but it's plastic. You can see that, but it's a pretty good card, right? No annual fee, 3x on dining and entertainment, streaming service, and groceries. And so there's a lot of really good reasons to have the Saver card, particularly when you realize that you can actually transfer your cash back into Venture Miles as long as you have a Venture One, a Venture card, or the Venture X. And so this is kind of a big deal, but well, it might just be getting a little bit bigger. So let's get into the news today. The news today. So it's from Reddit, but it's interesting, and I think it's definitely worth talking about. So, according to this particular user, Aggressive Code 67, they've had a Quicksilver card since it was product changed from the Walmart card last year. For those of you that have been a kind of a long time fan of the channel, you know that I used to have the Walmart card with Capital One, and then it was product changed automatically to a Quicksilver. But even before I got that Quicksilver card in the mail, it ended up actually coming. I ended up getting a product change offer to the Venture card, which I immediately took. Well, because I wanted a card that had no foreign transaction fees, as well as earned 2x Venture miles on every single purchase, and so I ended up actually going that way. But this person decided to keep their Quicksilver card, and they saw an option to product change to the regular Saver card with a bonus. So product changing, but then they get $200 after spending $500 now. So they ended up not product changing, not making that product change, but they wanted to go back and do it, and then went through the app, it wasn't there. So they called in, and the rep said that there was an exciting new product very soon, and that even if the new product doesn't match their needs, they'll be targeting existing card holders with product change offers across a series of cards, according to this particular Reddit user. So just to be clear, we're quoting a Reddit user on the Capital One forum who's quoting some supposedly a Capital One customer service rep on the phone. And so there's a couple different degrees of maybe this probably won't happen. Again, it's interesting because it's consistent with some of the other rumors that we've had a couple of months ago. So now this particular user speculates that it sounds like this could be the Saver X, and this is kind of the one card that Capital One just doesn't have. So that could be an option, or it could just be there's more news about the Discover thing. But let's kind of explore and revisit the Saver X rumors from a couple of months ago. So if you take a look, about 7-8 months ago, there was a survey that Capital One released to some of its users where they were asking about a potential Saver X credit card. And so the details in that survey were asking people if this card had these features, would they be interested? And so since this is the only data point that we have to go off of, we're going to talk about this particular potential version of the card. And of course, we have no idea of knowing if the Saver X is even coming, or if, it will look, if it does come, if it will look like this. But because this is the most recent data point, we're just going to talk about it real quick. So the that particular card in that survey would have had an annual fee of $295, and that's actually pretty expensive when you think about Capital One. Their most expensive credit card is $395 per year, so $295 would be pretty close to that, considering their next highest annual fee card is $95, and that's a Venture card, right? So that's kind of a big deal. But what do you get with this potential fee increase, at least according to this survey? So that was, you would get 4x as a multiplier on dining and entertainment. So you would actually kind of focus in on the Saver card strong suits, because especially if you have the American Express Gold card, the Saver card does kind of come into play when you're going, say, maybe to a concert, or if you're going to a play or something like that. Getting 3x there is good, but with the Saver X, maybe getting 4x would be better. So this would be really cool. Now, you would get 3x on groceries according to this particular survey, and as well as 10x on hotels, rental cars, and Capital One entertainment. And then that would have a $100 travel credit, presumably through the Capital One travel portal. That would probably work very similarly to the current $100 travel credit, or $300 travel credit rather, on the Venture X. And so that seems pretty straightforward. You would then get a $100 dining credit, which that it's pretty broad. it would be interesting to see how this actually worked because, well, with the American Express Gold Card, they do have a dining credit, and that essentially means that you have certain partners that you have to spend that on. And with the American Express Gold Card, that's Cheesecake Factory and Gold Belly, as well as Grubhub and a couple of others. And so this $120, and then in addition to that, there'd be a $120 Starbucks credit, presumably $10 every single month, because there's 12 months in a year. 10 times 12 is 120. And so honestly, yeah, I go to Starbucks at least once a month, and so this would definitely kind of fit in line with my current spending. And then, of course, this one actually would say that there would be an Apple TV and an Uber One membership included. So this kind of stands to reason that it's possible, but it also could not be. So recently, two cards came out that both covered those particular instances. So the Platinum card recently got a refresh where it increased annual fee to $895 and among other things, added the option to include in a Uber One membership. And of course, that can actually be covered for the annual membership or for the monthly membership. And so, so is it likely that Capital One has a similar deal? It's possible as long as Amex doesn't have an exclusivity agreement with their contract, but it's unlikely that they actually do, considering a lot of cards do offer that, including the American Express Delta cards, as well as the Apple card currently offers 6 months of free of Uber One as well. So that stands to reason that the SavorX card, if it ends up coming in this particular version, would have Uber One membership included, because Capital One actually used to have an Uber One membership on the regular Savor card, and the Savor One card for that matter. All right, so the Apple TV thing, this Chase Sapphire Reserve has an Apple TV credit as well. However, Joe Barretto recently said that he actually isn't able to get use out of this credit because it only covers the individual kind of subscription. And so he actually pays for the family version. And apparently I wasn't even aware there was a family version, but he said that he pays for the family version. And that credit doesn't really apply towards that particular membership. And so he hasn't been able to get a lot of value out of that particular thing. So let's take a look at this card. So if there were a sign-up bonus for this card for a product change, I would do it. I would do it hands down. So every time I actually apply for a regular card with Capital One, they deny me, but they do tell me that I'm approved for their whatever card for good credit. And honestly, the fact that I've opened up 24 cards in the past year, well, kind of means that my velocity is a little bit higher than most lenders now would care for, right? And so that actually kind of makes sense. Now, what that means is if they don't actually allow you to get a sign-up bonus for the card with a product change, I probably wouldn't qualify for the sign-up bonus on this card anyway. But it is possible that I could actually get the card without a sign-up bonus. And so I have to wonder, would I get enough value out of this? And so the $100 travel credit on the portal is not offensive to me. There's a number of hotels that are in the special kind of hotel collection with Capital One, and so being able to get $100 off of that hotel stay, and then also get the $50 resort credit and everything else that comes with that program, that would be easy for me. The $100 dining credit, depending on how that went, if it was $8 every month or something like that, that would be a little bit more difficult. But if it was just kind of a straight $100 a year, then I would consider that to be pretty good. $120 in Starbucks credit. Yeah, I think if this card showed up in this current form, I might actually get it even without a sign-up bonus. But if they did offer a sign-up bonus for product changes like this user on Reddit is saying, that would be pretty amazing. So, all right, so now let's go into kind of just an overall kind of top-down level ecosystem look at Capital One. So I recently did a video talking about Capital One and Discover. So recently, that was also another rumor, where Discover is essentially the cards are set to be merged into the Capital One app. So the Discover cards, the Discover It Miles, the Discover It Chrome, there's a lot of Discover-Its, right? Those are going to be going into the Capital One app. And the reason I got excited about that was because, well, currently with all the credit cards that are in my Capital One app, I can, within the app, move my credit limits from card to card, which means that my much higher Discover credit card limits could be transferred to my Capital One cards. And that actually might be helpful because, well, I do have a Visa on my Quicksilver, and being able to actually put $10,000 credit line on that might mean that I could trigger a product change offer to the Venture X, which that would be really a great way to get that card. Now, it would be less optimal than actually getting the sign up bonus, but again, Capital One doesn't like me for those sign up bonuses. So I've been in pop up jail for Capital One, well, for a while. And, it's actually a little bit more absolute than the one with American Express, but nobody actually talks about that. But everyone likes to talk about American Express, so there we go. We've mentioned it. I could get that tag, and hopefully someone will search for that and see this video. But anyway, so yeah, Capital One is that could be possible. But also, what interests me about this too is that if I could actually change my Discover It rewards into venture miles like I can with my Saver card and my Quicksilver card, then that means that Capital One goes from having a duo to having a trio of cards that actually make sense. The Discover It card rotating categories would actually become 5x instead of 5% back, and that would be pretty substantial. Now, the only question is whether or not Capital One miles are worth it. So in order to do that, we have to take a look at what I've been able to get value out of. So my only kind of transfer partners that I've used with Capital One so far has been JetBlue, Air France, and Virgin Atlantic. And so Virgin Atlantic, is kind of the lion's share there because, well, it's easy to book Delta flights with Virgin Atlantic, and the point values are kind of actually competitive with some of Delta's like internal things. So it might make sense to actually use Capital One miles, transfer to Virgin or even Air France, and then book that Delta flight. Now, another thing is Air France. So last year, my wife and I, we traveled on Air France, and I was able to get 8 cents per point with those Air France points because I was able to, get, business class seats, 2 business class seats for 100,000 points. And that was really solid. And so that was also an awesome option. And so now I did use transfer to JetBlue, but that was actually just kind of, I transferred the bare minimum of 1,000 points because, well, the day that they actually offered JetBlue for the first time as a transfer partner, they had a kind of informal bonus where if you transferred 1,000 points that day, you would get 1,000 or basically an additional 5,000 JetBlue points. And so I went ahead and pulled the trigger on that. That went through, and then I got that 5,000 points. But I definitely wouldn't recommend transferring to JetBlue now, just because the transfer ratio is really, really poor, and so that's also important to consider. So the other thing that I have to consider about with Capital One points, though, is that it's a little bit more difficult for most people to get everyday value from this program. And so there isn't really a direct competitor for, hotels, right? You do have Accor, you do have some other options, but the ratios aren't nearly as good as other programs. And like, for example, with American Express, you can get 1 to 2 with Hilton. For Choice, you can get 1 to 2 with Citi. And so there's a lot of different options. And even I Prefer with Citi, you have 1 to 4, which means a really good room only costs like maybe 7,500 Citi points, which is kind of a big deal. So Capital One, I'm really intrigued with what they're doing with their ecosystem, but I do feel like they need to have better kind of domestic transfer partners and just something that makes it easier for most people to get decent value. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. And thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate you. Have a great day.